All right, so this video we are going to talk about a topic called synchronous versus asynchronous process. Okay, see, if you are a Salesforce developer, you have to be aware about this synchronous and asynchronous process. Okay, and you must have heard about this a lot, and this name are basically very much confusing, right? So I'll try to give you a very easy example to understand the concept of synchronous versus asynchronous process, and which process in Salesforce is synchronous and which process in Salesforce is asynchronous is what we are going to talk about today. Okay. So synchronous is a process. Salesforce or in the matter of any software, right? It is running in a server. It has some bandwidth, right? And you are basically instructing the server to do something. Maybe you have some Apex code that you have written, which is actually creating some data, updating some data, right? So you are trying to consume the bandwidth of the server, right? Of the client server, correct? Now, what happened in this synchronous process, right? Synchronous process basically says that let's say your server has some bandwidth and you have consumed the entire bandwidth, and next set of requirement that we have, next set of things that needs to be done, you have to wait until unless that first thing that is getting executed is completed. Okay, and asynchronous is basically, right, let's say you have two things to do simultaneously, right? First thing, you have started and that is going on in the server, but that is going on in the backend, right? And you can actually at the same time can invoke your second job, you can start your third job, and all these three jobs can go in parallel, right? That is called asynchronous. Let me give you a quick real example. Let's say in my home, I have my kids, mom, dad, and my wife, right? So let's say I have only one car in my home, and my son is to go to school with that car. I have to go to my office, my dad has to go to his office, right? My wife has to go to market or something, right? So everybody has to go somewhere at the same time around 10 o'clock morning, but we have only one car. So what will happen? The driver will go drop that kid first, driver will go and drop my dad, then driver will come and take me up, and then see, because we have only one resource, we have only one car, so even though we have all these four things to be done at around 10 o'clock, but still we have to wait for the driver to drop my kid and come back home and pick me up, for the driver to drop me in my office and come back to my home and pick my dad, right? So everybody has to be in the waiting until unless that job is been completed. So this example that I have given, right, where we have only one car and everybody has to wait that by the time that car is getting free, and then once the car is getting free, then the second person can use that car, and third person, right? So this is same thing happen in synchronous. Okay, synchronous means it just it should be done in one go. Okay, let's say you have some piece of code written in Apex, right? And that piece of code will be written in just one go. It will not wait for certain time, right? It just will be, if the resources are free, it will be done, right? In the case of asynchronous, see, sometimes what happen, our Apex code, it sometimes takes a lot of time to compile. I mean, if you guys have observed this, I mean, if you have worked with an enterprise level project, right, where the data volume is very high. For example, let's say whenever a lead gets created or updated, you are basically checking in the contact whether there is a data with the same lead data available or not. Now there are like many contacts, like billions of contact, right? So this checking in the contact, like this particular portion, right, it might take maybe 2 second time to to execute, but your trigger, trigger is basically synchronous. It will just happen like this, right? When you create a record, when you update a record, when you delete a record, your trigger will be executing in just no time, right? It cannot wait for the Apex class code that you have written to check your contact. It will not wait for that. Trigger will just be executed in no time, right? So your trigger is a synchronous process. It cannot wait, right? But the handler, like trigger handler method that you have written, which has the contact logic, it takes some time to execute, right? Now this would be a problem because trigger will not wait for your Apex trigger handler logic to be performed, right? Trigger will be executed, but this will take some time. See, in this case, the problem is like your trigger, when it calls your Apex class, right? If the Apex class is taking so much of time to execute, the trigger will fail. right? This will be a problem. So this is where we have a process, we have a annotation, right? In test class, have you seen this annotation called @istest? So we have so many annotations, right? So there is an annotations available in Salesforce called @future annotations. This @future annotations helps the normal Apex class to be executed asynchronously. Asynchronously means it will be running in the backend whenever it gets its free resources, right? Whenever the server is free, it will take its own time to be executed. You don't have to let the trigger be executed in just 1 microseconds. But the Apex class which you have written, it will take some time because the Apex class you have written in future method, right? So future is an annotation given by Salesforce which will help us to make a process asynchronous. And why do you need it? You need these things to be asynchronous when you have a lot of things, lot of data to be processed, right? And which is taking a lot of time. So if there is an Apex class which is taking a lot of time to be executed, and if you're calling that particular class from your trigger will never wait for this class to be executed. Trigger will fire immediately, and if the the class is not being executed in that time, that will be a problem. So in this case, what you have to do is let the trigger run and let your Apex class logic be running in the backend parallelly. Let it take like 2, 3, 5 seconds time, right? To make this particular thing happen, right, you have to use @future annotations. Let's get back to my screen. I'm showing you how we have to use this @future annotation. So if you see my screen, right, I have taken a lead trigger. I have written a lead trigger, and this trigger is basically calling one method, okay? And I have written a method here called explain future method. That's the class name. Method name is this. So let's say my method, this particular first method, has a piece of code which is taking a lot of time to be executed. Now your Apex trigger will call on before insert, your Apex trigger will be executed. But the problem is this particular method that you have written now, it is taking a lot of time to be executed, right? As I said, your trigger will never wait, right? Your trigger will just be executed in just few seconds, in just few microseconds, right? So now to solve this problem where your trigger said that I'm not going to wait, but this method is taking a lot of time to execute, in this case, all you have to do is you have to make this Apex class which is taking so much of time asynchronous, meaning all you have to do is you have to put here future. If you use this future annotations, right, this future annotation is telling, like, the moment you use this @future, this will tell the system that, hey system, this particular class might take some time, so let this class be running in parallel, right? And whatever the dependency that is there with this class, let it get executed. So what happens, right, this trigger will be executed but immediately, but your future method will take some time and it will be running in the backend. We typically need this particular things when if I give you a real scenario, right, we have learned about integration, right? And whenever you're calling another server, whenever trying to integrate Salesforce with another system, it takes some time to get the response, correct? So let's say whenever a lead gets created, the lead data is supposed to be transferred to the ERP system. Now the ERP system is taking few seconds to respond. Do you think your trigger will wait? No. So in this case, what we have to do is we have to make that integration class we have to enable that integration class and method with @future. The moment you enable this particular method with future annotations, right, your trigger will be executed. Doesn't matter how much time your Salesforce the integration class is taking, your trigger will be executed, and whenever this is done, your future class method is been executed, it will give the result, right? So you are basically telling the system that, hey system, let the trigger be executed, but this method will take some time, so I'm just adding here @future annotation. So future annotations, future method, this is called future method, will help us to make a particular method asynchronous, so that the method, if it is taking so much of time, let it run in the backend and execute parallelly. It will not hamper the other executions, correct? So whenever you find this kind of a scenario that you have to make a you have to make a particular method asynchronous, you just have to add this @feature. That's it. System will understand automatically, right? So hope this concept is clear. What is synchronous, what is asynchronous, why exactly you need this feature annotation, right? What is the use of this is pretty much clear. Couple of limitations you have here, okay? By the way, let's say batch apex, right? Batch apex, right? The concept that you have already discussed in the previous video. Batch works in asynchronous way. I remember I told you in the batch video, right, that let's say there are 100,000 record, and 100,000 record doesn't get processed in just one go, right? It takes 2,000 batch size and gets executed. So batch class is basically an asynchronous process where the process is taking maybe an hour time, couple of minutes time, but it is getting executed in the backend parallelly. So batch is asynchronous. Okay. Now the limitation that we have is one asynchronous process cannot call another asynchronous process. What I mean is this, right? Let's say you have a batch class. The batch class anyway by default it is asynchronous, right? If you have another Apex class written which you are putting is @future, you cannot call that future method from your batch class, because batch itself is a asynchronous and you are calling another asynchronous method from batch. That's not going to happen, correct? So to make the synchronous process wait, right, we have to use this @future so that the synchronous process let it get executed without any problem, but in the backend the other method which you think it might take some time will be executing by taking its own time, right? So this is the benefit of @future. It is just a concept that you have to know. Wherever you find this could be a problem, right? The method might take some time. Just put @future. Ideally, what happened, we as a developer, sometimes we cannot recognize it. So we get error message in the go, right, in the production, and then we finally understand, okay, this particular method is taking time. So let's just put @future, and that solves the problem. So this is all about synchronous versus asynchronous process in Salesforce. Thank you very much.